Welcome to video 2 of my mini mindset series. And if you missed video 1, go back and check it out. Last week I was talking about the fear of yes. When you are excited to start your design career, your art career, your surface pattern career, but one of the things that's holding you back is that you're worried that someone will think your work is good enough and will want to hire you and you won't be up to the task. So if you didn't see that video, check it out. And today we're talking about a new topic related to the ways that we hold ourselves back in our own minds as we move forward in our creative careers. And the topic that we're discussing today is imposter syndrome. So if you're not familiar with imposter syndrome, it's something that statistically affects at least 70% of people, and at one point or another. And it's basically doubting your skills and your accomplishments and being fearful that you're going to be exposed as a fraud, as someone who's pretending to be better than they are at their field of expertise. This certainly affects beginners, but even if you've been in your field for 20 years, you can still be suffering from the effects of imposter syndrome, of worrying that you're not good enough for the level that you're achieving, the success you're achieving in your career. And I want to give you a few indicators of imposter syndrome, because sometimes we're not directly thinking, consciously thinking that we're not good enough. We throw a lot of other obstacles in our way that can be an indicator, but we're not necessarily consciously saying, I'm not good enough, I can't handle this, I am worried that everyone's going to find out, right? But we might be undercharging, which is sort of speaking to the fact that you are thinking you're not as professional or your work isn't as quality as somebody else, so you're charging less. Because you are worried that you're not good enough. Another indicator could be, besides undercharging, could be not submitting your work to an art director or not applying for a position because you feel you're not qualified for it, which is very typical of females. I've read studies where, a man will apply to a position if he's got about 50% of the qualifications listed in the job application or the job listing, and a woman will not apply until she's like 95% of the qualifications listed. Okay, so sometimes we need to put ourselves forward and go for it, and understand that not all job listings and not all requirements are 100% requirements, and that you should go for it anyways. So imposter syndrome can show up as not charging enough, not going for positions that you want to explore, not reaching out to art directors. Unnecessary perfectionism is another one. Obviously, there are different levels of people who are perfectionists. Some people are just more detail oriented than others. But if you're finding yourself working on your designs and your portfolio for ages, if you're coming back to the same art over and over again and making little tweaks and not being satisfied with it and coming back and saying, no, it's not quite right, or you're working on your email to send out to an art director and you've edited it 10 times over the last month, that can be a sign that you are suffering from imposter syndrome. You're not confident in what you have to offer, so you're making all these tweaks and trying to improve something that really doesn't need improvement. And then the final indicator that you might be suffering from imposter syndrome is procrastination, right? So I'm not much of a procrastinator, but when I find myself not doing the things that I plan to do, that I set forth to do, it's because I have this feeling that I'm not quite there yet, that I'm not quite ready for it yet, that I haven't made the right decision to move forward with something. I'm just not quite ready. And a lot of times, we procrastinate on sending out our work or displaying our work on Instagram or whatever it is, because we are having these internal subconscious feelings that we are not good enough. So those are some indicators that you might be suffering from imposter syndrome. So what are a few tips that I can give you to help overcome imposter syndrome? So the first tip is, I went over this a lot more in last week's video, but again, we are going to look at facts versus assumptions, right? One example that came up recently in my Start Your Surface Pattern Business course is we were talking about LinkedIn profiles and updating our profiles so that it said that we are a surface pattern designer. And some of the students were saying that this was bringing up some imposter syndrome because they felt like they weren't a surface pattern designer. And my question to them was, do you design patterns? Have you designed a surface pattern? You might not be a professional surface pattern designer, but you can be a surface pattern designer. If I am making sweaters for all my friends, then I'm a knitter. I mean, I'm not necessarily getting like knitting sponsorships and I'm not, you know, doing it professionally, but I'm a knitter if I knit sweaters for my friends. And if you've ever designed a surface pattern design, let's say 5 or 6, you know, the first one could be I wouldn't jump into that title, but if you've designed some, you are a surface pattern designer and you don't have to feel like you're not. So looking at what the actual facts are versus what your assumptions. The assumption in this case was that by saying you're a surface pattern designer, you are indicating that you're a professional. The next suggestion for overcoming imposter syndrome is to accentuate your small wins, accentuate your forward progress, keep a list, keep a running list somewhere where see it regularly of all the things you've been doing to make progress over the last 6 months, 12 months, however long you've been pursuing your surface pattern or creative career. When we look back at that list, we realize how much progress we've made. We celebrate the small things, and you know, a win doesn't have to be I got a client. A win can be I sent an email out to a new art director, to a new company. I put together you know, a PDF of all my greeting cards, so I'm ready to send out an email. So you have to really pay attention to those so you can remember that you are moving forward even if you feel like you are not enough. The third suggestion is to visualize success. So we hear about this one with like professional athletes and basically just professional athletes, but we hear about this idea of people visualizing, you know, the game, them making the moves, doing the routine, whatever their sport is, and thinking about what it looks like to win, to do it successfully, and that being so helpful in their training, right? I read an interesting study when I was looking into imposter syndrome, and it was a study where they divided people into 3 groups, and they had each of the groups write for 10 minutes. And one group wrote about their hopes, their dreams, their aspirations for 10 minutes. And one group wrote about their current day-to-day life and the duties that they perform in their job, and just sort of just describing their life for 10 minutes. And then the final group wrote about their commute for 10 minutes, okay? And then after everyone had written for 10 minutes, they mixed up the groups and created projects for everyone where, you know, it was like a group project that they had to do. I'm not sure exactly what they were trying to accomplish. And afterwards they interviewed people, and consistently the people who wrote about their dreams and their aspirations, they were consistently rated most assertive, most proactive, more problem solvers. And that is just showing that when you're thinking about your dreams, thinking about your aspirations regularly, when you're visualizing your own success, you're helping yourself get in line to go in that direction. And finally, my favorite reminder for getting over imposter syndrome, or at least trying to keep it in check, is remind yourself that done is better than perfect. So this is one of my favorite mottos, and honestly it's been my 2020 mantra for sure, because we're all just trying to make it through 2020, right? And we're just doing the best we can. So done is better than perfect. I know that this year especially, nothing I'm doing is perfect. This video could be way better, but we're doing what we can do to get it done, because this information is useful to you even if this is not the most polished video you've ever seen, right? So do you want the most, I'm going back to my knitting analogy from earlier. Do you want the most beautiful, perfect, stitch perfect, I don't know knitting terms, stitch, knit, well, anyways, do you want the most perfect sleeve of a sweater, or do you want a slightly irregular, not quite 1000% perfect sweater? Based on the success of, you know, factory outlet stores where like irregularities are very useful, I'm thinking people want the irregular stuff more than they want a single sleeve of a sweater, because that would be 100% useless. So just remind yourself, done is always going to be better than perfect. And those are my tips on getting over imposter syndrome, trying to push it to the side. We're all feeling it at one point or another in our career, most likely statistically, but we can do the best we can to sort of check our mindset by separating facts versus assumptions, accentuating our small wins and our forward progress, visualizing our success, and reminding ourselves that done is better than perfect. So I will see you next week for one last mini mindset mini series video, and definitely go back and check out last week's The Fear of Yes if you haven't seen it yet.